A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth and moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about what it means to be spiritual and how to deepen your spirituality authentically and your intimacy with Daniel Thorson, a creator of The Intimate Mirror on Substack. He writes on really great, deep topics, including reflections on meaning, transformation, intimacy, and finding our religion in the age of AI. So I love this, such a meaningful kind of approach to connecting with people today. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Even like the idea of AI and for the spiritual community who's like connecting to their authentic self.
Yes.
What do you think about AI? Because I feel like in one way it's interesting to have options of options at your fingertips. But then if we think about it's a program that has to have a narrative somehow because somebody has to be influencing it, right? So it's like who is behind it, who's pushing it forward. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, this is something that I've written a couple of articles about. There's one called AI, the AI Middle Way, and another article or guide on how to use AI for emotional healing. And I've spent a lot of time actually thinking and feeling about this topic. And I think it's both, there's a simultaneity of tremendous opportunity and real risk. And the risk, as I see it, comes in how you relate to these systems. I see a bunch of people treating them as if they're persons, like naming their AIs, developing emotional relationships with them. I think that's very dangerous. On the other hand, there is the opportunity to use AI as almost like an assistant to explore your interior, and therefore to do the work of the spiritual path in releasing stuck emotions and clarifying your connection to what is good, true, and beautiful. And so it's this kind of like double-edged sword, and it requires a degree of precision and thoughtfulness to engage with, in my view.
I love that. Yes, it's so true. If you don't have that sovereignty within yourself and that awareness within your reality, then of course it's so easy to cling on to things, especially when it's always there and there's always an answer for you. It's like that idea of codependency, toxic codependency, and there's like people who are anxiously attached individuals, they'll cling onto it so much more. So it's like it can also create this hectic, over obsessive kind of personality. And it's also like testing people to see like, are you actually sovereign, or are you going to rely on something that's fully external, even though it does have a lot of answers?
Yeah, and another facet of this is that like we have to understand that artificial intelligence, these systems, use language in a way that is very alien to the way that you and I use language. So when I say something like, I'm sad, or I'm happy, or I'm curious about you, that is, if I'm a person who has integrity, aligned with an interior experience of curiosity or sadness. When an AI says, oh, that's a really fascinating point, there's no interior experience that's aligned with. It's making that up. It's basically functioning as a psychopath, right? If we were to find a person who was saying things that had no integrity with their interior experience, we would call that person a psychopath, and we would stay far away from them. And so we just have to be very aware of the nature of these systems when we interact with them, to avoid very real risks in terms of how they might impact our sovereignty and sense making.
Yes, 100%. That awareness is so important and crucial. And it kind of comes back to like your own creativity, and it also brings you back to what can you offer. And if you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at balletartsmovement@gmail.com. First class free. TeleVital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with zeolite, super green juice, micronutrient gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for TeleVital. Link in the description of the podcast.
Yes.
To just focus on that realization also, because if we're going to like overly focus on something externally, again, we're going to limit our own ability to embrace those deep aspects of truth and knowledge within ourselves. It's going to be so easy to just, search the answer over here or figure out. So it also kind of might potentially block people from evolving in a beautiful way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
And I saw your recent article about Buddhism and the idea
Hmm.
how that's fantastic, so interesting. It's called the avoidant Dharma, how Western
Yeah.
Buddhism validates emotional withdrawal. I think
Hmm.
this is so interestingly relevant today, and I feel like me personally, I've had to go through so many experiences with the friendships where
Hmm.
like I felt like I was present and I was more like securely attached in a like relationship or friendship, and I've had so many experiences where people were just like not giving me that same like feedback, that same responsive, just like a healthy, responsive manner.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was just like they were a little bit more isolated and detached. And then later I found out that they're taking on a like spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual path, but it
Yeah.
turns out that actually that's leading them into kind of like a stagnant, endless cycle of nothingness. And I mean, I guess we all have to go through the journey of spiritual awakening, spiritual awareness. We do have to go through introspection and stuff like that. But your article is so brilliant. How did you come to this realization that
Hmm.
yes, the idea of Buddhism is fantastic. It teaches love and peace and all these great values, but how people took it one step too far.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I came to this through many, many years of practicing within the Buddhist context. I spent 6 years in a
Oh,
monastery.
oh
I've spent about
wow.
20, intensively meditating and pursuing the path of Buddhism. And it's only in the last few years that I really saw the degree to which I had I had used Buddhism, and I think I'd been supported in using Buddhism by a lot of the teachers and spaces of practice that I participated in. That I had used Buddhism to basically reinforce the kind of intimacy disorder that I had been encultured into. I think it's fair to say that our culture has a profound disorder when it comes to intimacy, a fear of intimacy, an incapacity to be in true intimacy with themselves, with each other in the world. And there was a way that I used Buddhism to enable that, to, just kind of reinforce those tendencies. And it was very sad to see that. But it was a very important part of my own journey and process. And, so I wrote this article kind of looking back and reflecting on how that happened, and in order to both help others like see this more quickly perhaps, and also, as I'm doing in the next articles, I'm actually doing a whole series critiquing Buddhism,
Oh wow.
to possible avenues for new interpretations or forms of the Buddha Dharma that might be more in alignment with the predicament that we find ourselves in this culture. Yeah, that integrate attachment theory and the nature of the kind of global postmodern cultural situation we're in.
Yes, it's an interesting take on the attachment styles also, because I feel like
Yeah.
we are always going through different cycles of healing or learning or awareness, and at that time we become like our personality, I feel like it shifts, and sometimes we have like anxious attachment, maybe like we're going through some kind of healing or trauma recovery or
Yeah.
something, and then hopefully we're striving towards choosing a secure attachment style. But I thought it was interesting because today is actually National Multiple Personality Day, and that's an interesting thought of, showing the problem with attachment styles and the issues that are facing society.
Mm.
And it's like, I also just like Googled the the psychology, I guess doctors people would call them, but like
Mm.
Freud, Carl Rogers, and Carl Jung. Like I remember in school learning about Freud, like he was the father of
Mm.
psychology. But recently I started learning more about how divisive that
Yeah.
is. And I feel like that was like the first, like that whole the id, ego, superego, those three components of our supposed psycho, analyzing
Mhm.
the self. I feel like that's a beginning where the distortion is also created and leading towards that detachment, dissociation.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize I'm learning about this all the time. I thought, oh, interesting. I didn't do like deep research about it. I knew how to take a class like that, but this kind of idea of person-centered psychotherapy, it feels like an antithesis to everything holistic and everything that
Mhm.
we should be striving to teach each other on the path
Mhm.
towards spirituality. And that's why I thought Carl Jung was a great reflection, because he believed in spirituality and the psychological reality of like God, the divine. He was more aligned towards the idea that the psyche is conscious and
Yeah.
subconscious. And I think that's more reflective of ourselves. Like we have an aspect of consciousness, and we have to learn
Mm.
to integrate our subconscious. Like that creates more of a healthy, attached personality. So I think this topic is super
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. You're so right, and I think a lot of what Western culture has to offer the path, broadly speaking, is a deep understanding of psychology and psychodynamics. Attachment theory, in particular, is incredibly helpful in navigating the ways that our minds get disordered in our culture. My sense is that almost every kind of psychological disorder, from narcissism to codependency, has its roots in the attachment system. And that and we know actually how to meaningfully secure the attachment system. It takes work, but it's possible. But these understandings aren't widely disseminated in a culture. And so there's work to be done in constructing a path and distributing it that really like helps people learn these things that are, again, are there, but it takes weird people like us to do a lot of work to kind of find them and then bring them back into context so they can be seen and understood and utilized.
Yes, totally. And what do you think it means to be like a spiritual in today's day and age with all these different trends and ideologies?
Wonderful question. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. For me, when I think of what it means to be spiritual, it means that I have found a way to align myself with God, which means that I've aligned my motivational system with the love of goodness, truth, and beauty, so that I'm moving according to that instead of the kind of perverse incentive structures of our culture that try to get me to seek status or wealth or accumulation. And so that work of sort of undistorting our motivational system and clarifying our desire is the work of spirituality.
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the #1 purposeful living app. in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast. Yes, I love that. That awareness of the higher blueprint, like it's so true. I remember I had like a
Mm,
guidebook and I was doing work with my clients who are doing like inner child healing work, and they were always like searching
mm,
for their perfect like blueprint. And many times people struggle
mm.
with that because they only envision like a physical aspect, that maybe they're craving to start a career or shift what they're studying in school, but they're leaving out some
Yes.
kind of like spiritual component that's motivating them to question like why do they want to do this purpose, like what is it actually inspiring on a deeper level for them. Maybe a past version of themselves needs it, or maybe they feel like a lot of people will benefit from their teaching and their knowledge. So yeah, I think the spiritual component is so true, it's so crucial, because I feel like that gives us such a beautiful integration of everything that we know and could know more about ourselves that will drive
Mm.
essentially a purpose forward.
Yes. Yeah. And it's important to understand that billions and billions of dollars are being spent to manipulate your desires, to manipulate
Right.
what you think you want. Right. And so when you think you want a Tesla, that's actually not what you want. You probably want security. You probably want to feel like you're enough. And that questioning of your desires, like, why do I want what I want? What's really going on, is for me the essence of the path, to really go through that process of clarification, of introspection, and seeing the ways that we have, been misled about who we are, and what we most deeply long for. Because what we most deeply long for is actually who we are. It's just that we've lost track of that. And then when we've realized
Yeah.
that, we cannot be manipulated, we cannot be uh, confused, and then we are a force for good in the world. And we need more people who uh, are coming from that place.
Yes, that's beautiful. It's so true. And especially for people who are empaths, so many people who are on the spiritual path tend to be empaths because, they are craving this spiritual growth and consciousness awareness. And that's when their heart chakras are open. So they're more kind of privy to experiencing this betrayal from the outside
Mm,
world, thinking that it's kindness and it's compassion, but
mm,
actually it's not. It's actually like indoctrination. It's toxic. Like yeah, like
yes.
narcissists. You mentioned narcissist.
Mhm.
Pretending it's one way, but it's actually another way. And
Mm,
a lot of people, unfortunately, learn the hard way that a lot of people are broken themselves, and they
yeah.
try to break down people as well. And it's a huge lesson for everybody to know your value, and also to kind of also like psychologically be aware of other people's values, because if you're able to see what other people stand for and what they respect, you're going to be able to then put stronger boundaries, or at least know not to get in the middle of their own journey.
Yes. Yeah. And also to admit with humility our own narcissism, right? That we live in such a narcissistic
Yes.
culture.
True.
And it's almost nobody survives to adulthood without some narcissistic personality structure. And so really, yes, we can see the narcissism outside of us, but it's, I think, actually more important to see the narcissism within us and do the deep hard work of untangling that and returning to love.
So true. Yes, very true. And sometimes we have to become narcissists in order to, survive in society, in situations, relationships. So
Indeed.
that's also, you have to forgive yourself for all those things that you participated in, because perhaps that was the only option. And that redemption
Yes.
journey is also deeply spiritual and healing, when you're able to see all you've done, all you've chosen, and to make that shift, to realize that, okay, now I have to choose differently and hopefully realign to a better, more secure version of myself that will leave lead to more safety and more healing overall.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's a simultaneity of appropriately protecting yourself from the toxic forces around you and finding a way to so deeply understand them that you have compassion and love for them. Because then you can re-engage with them in a way that might help them untangle their own distortions and narcissism. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And that's where intimacy, I feel like, is birthed from, like that space of truth, having authenticity without ulterior motives, because I feel like sometimes people are authentic, but then they need something in return, like they're doing it for a specific reason. So that happens pretty
Exactly.
often. That So finding intimacy, I think it's a great topic, and you talk about this on your Substack. What do you think is the most important part of intimacy that can help
Hmm.
us to be more aware that it's okay to let down our guard and be more vulnerable with ourselves?
Yeah, it's actually exactly what you say. The ulterior motives, the sense that I'm actually interacting with you to get something from you, is the death of intimacy. It's only when I am with you out of the love of goodness, truth, and beauty for its own sake, meaning for the intrinsic value of being with you, that intimacy can really unfold. That is the basis, and that's also the path. The path brings us to a position where we can, as they say in Zen, enlightenment is intimacy with all things. We just receive everything as it is, and we love it as it is, and from that place it can unfold into more and more of itself.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think so many people were brought up in the lack mentality or fear-based
Yes.
environment that they're even scared to be intimate because they feel like they can only get something from somebody. Like they feel like that's their only value, to get something. Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast. So that, I think,
Yes.
that awareness requires a lot of work on the self to be
Exactly.
aware of that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And exactly. And I would say that for most people, the journey of intimacy starts with self intimacy. You can only be as intimate with others as you are with yourself. And so if you have rooms in your psyche that you're not willing to enter, that will be exactly the place that you can't go in relationship.
So true. What helped you with deepening your intimacy with your own self, even?
Oh, yeah, it was actually, I mean, many things, but uh, what comes to mind now is, being in relationship with others and getting right up to that edge, seeing the way that I was the obstacle to a deepening of love, and then having really the grace and the courage to fall apart into the places in me that were so scary and terrifying to be with, because I early childhood trauma and so on. But it was yeah, getting to that depth of intimacy with others and then seeing like, oh, actually, I'm in the way. I'm in the way. And then that created the conditions for me to fall apart such that I could find a deeper intimacy.
Wow, that's so beautifully stated. I love that. Yes, it's so true.
Yeah.
That's like the journey of intimacy. We have to experience it fully and to be kind of okay with accepting all those parts. And
Yes.
then we rise and hopefully become better versions of ourselves. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and that's where faith comes in. It really, before you go through this process, it really seems like opening in that way will be the worst possible thing that could ever happen. But it's only when, if you have enough faith to um, kind of bringing home these parts of ourselves that have been cast off, that we can find a different way of being that is actually the source of all meaning and love and goodness. And it's worth it, but it's so terrifying to the ego structure. And we need to have compassion for how terrifying it is. And so many people are on the precipice right now of that kind of breakdown. And I've written about this, and will go through this as the systems and structures that we've used to organize our world are falling apart, because they are falling apart. And so, to speak of what you said at the beginning of this kind of dependency and codependency, so many people
Yes.
are dependent on the New York Times and dependent on, just a lot of things going exactly in a certain way and appearing in a certain way for their sense of coherence and well-being. And that dependency is going to break soon, and they are going to be thrown into dissolution. And it's up to us as people who have been through that to show up for them and to love them through it and to hold them, so that they can come out the other side as more whole people. Because it's really
100%,
risky,
yes.
actually. A lot of people don't make it. Yeah, a lot of people don't make it.
Yeah, that's really true. That we put our faith into something, and even though it's externally, we did value that at one point because we thought that it's the correct alignment to provide us with
Yeah,
truth, with the higher source of
exactly.
knowledge and information.
Exactly.
And when,
Yeah, yeah,
lies start being told, and that's a huge like shock to the system of the soul and the self, and yes, the ego too. So it's like it's a whole thing.
yeah.
We have to kind of be comfortable, which is truly uncomfortable.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. So what's next? What kind of topics are you looking forward to writing on Substack? Because it's super inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, so I'm continuing this series that's kind of lovingly critiquing Buddhism, and then I have no idea. I just follow my own curiosity and eros, and I trust that there will be another topic that will arise for me to write about. I'm I do coaching, so that's how I make most of my livelihood. I support people in their own emotional and spiritual process, and then I have a number of other kind of creative projects that I'm working on. But yeah, I don't know what I'll write about next. I'll be curious to find out.
That's fantastic. Yeah, being open as a channel. I love that. Thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on the podcast. It was a beautiful conversation filled with so many nuggets of wisdom and just a great spiritual depth that many of our listeners are probably going to appreciate to help them along their
Hmm.
journey of spirituality and healing. So thanks again.
Thank you, Ari. It was a pleasure to speak with you.